Welcome back to the news today. This is the Daily Debate, 6 days after the Israeli election, and today it became official. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu secured the majority needed to form the next Israeli government. But there is still a long road ahead with negotiations with different parties on the terms to enter government and who will get each ministry. But one interesting post-elections outcome will be to see what will become of Israeli-U.S. relations that are far from relaxed. With me are my two favorite duo. This is Marc Zell, co-chair of Republicans Abroad. Good evening, Israel.
Good evening, Lucy. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. And also, on the other side, Sheldon Schorer from Democrats Abroad Israel. Good evening.
The other side, the opposite side.
I like the other side. We're not. We're on the same side, all of us. But before we will start discussing this, let's see what our viewers have to say about that. Amen.
Good evening, Lucy, and good evening to our guests. So much has been said of the strained relations between Israel and the U.S. recently, but as you mentioned, things did seem to take a turn for the worse when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he will not support the establishment of a Palestinian state. Now, as we know, President Barack Obama has since reiterated that the U.S. is still committed to a two-state solution. So where do the two leaders go from here? Let's see what our viewers had to say. We asked them, does Netanyahu bear sole responsibility for the rift in U.S.-Israel relations? And the results of our poll today show a clear trend. As you can see, Lucy, 81%, that's the overwhelming majority, said that Netanyahu does not bear sole responsibility for this rift. 15%, though, voted yes. But the comments we received today were more diverse in comparison. Let's start with Moshe, who said, Israel needs to wake up and realize it needs the U.S. if it wants to survive. We're surrounded with hostile countries, and the U.S. has been supporting us long before Netanyahu was prime minister. So there's a sentiment here that the Israeli prime minister may have not been careful enough in maintaining relations with the U.S. for the long run. And this is reflected in our next comment too. Daniel writes, Netanyahu is not to blame. Israeli leadership historically is to blame. Arik Sharon said America has little influence over Israel. And many Israelis do remember this remark made in secret by the former prime minister, which seemed to minimize the U.S. and its power. Our next comment comes from Jennifer in New York and gives us some insight into the situation in the U.S. Jennifer says, the feeling here in the U.S. for American Jews is that Benjamin Netanyahu is making it hard to continue to support the Israeli government openly. His decision to speak to Congress, despite the president's wishes, didn't help. And let's end with Vibhuti, who tells us, unlike the situation in Israel, American presidents can only serve for 8 years. Obama is serving his last 2. Bibi is playing his cards right, she says. He knows that soon he'll be dealing with a different president anyway. So, Lucy, I think that's a good place to end with. Many believe that just like Obama distanced himself from George Bush, the next president of the U.S. will distance themselves from Obama, which could work out well for the Israeli prime minister. And for the next 2 years, as we know, that's Benjamin Netanyahu. That's it for the comments today, Lucy. Sending it back to you.
Yes, Ayman, thank you very much. You know, I want to take it from the last comment that we heard. You know, Benjamin Netanyahu knows that it's so obvious that the United States will, in any case, anywhere, anytime, will support Israel. So, what does he care? I will go and I will speak in the Congress. I will say that I am pro the Palestinian government, pro-Palestinian state. I will say that I'm against Palestinian state. I will say whatever I want. At the end of the day, America, the United States, is obliged to stand next to the only democracy in the Middle East.
Well, I wish, Lucy, I could agree with you. I think this president has showed that that is not the case, that he is prepared to up the stakes in the Israel-U.S. relationship, at least at the highest level. I think the relationship is solid in terms of public support, in terms of the military and intelligence cooperation. I think that is unlikely to change. But at the upper level, the the President of the United States is making sounds that we haven't heard a president make probably since Dwight Eisenhower. And and for reasons that are very different from what Eisenhower was talking about in 1956 during the Suez campaign. So I think it can go south from here. I think we would hope that the leadership on both sides of the pond will be able to repair the damage at that level, because in fact
It is damage.
It
right?
is there is damage, and there's no question about it. And the enemies of Israel and the United States see it that way, and they're going to take advantage of it. I think we need to see in the year and a half or so that remains of the Obama presidency, we're going to need to see hopefully some change on his part. I'm not too optimistic about that. But look, the realities in the Middle East will require both leaders to kind of wake up and pay attention to what's really at issue here, the Iranian threat and, of course, the dissolution of stability in the Arab Middle East. I mean, it's a problem.
Let's try.
The two principal interests that the American and Israel have been working on for the past X number of years has been the Iranian problem and, of course, the peace process with Palestinians. And on both of these issues, it was Benjamin Netanyahu who's been provocative, antagonistic, and difficult. Obama hasn't changed. Netanyahu has changed. He goes into the United States Congress and says, "You're making a bad deal, Mr. President. You shouldn't be doing it." And when it comes to the two-state solution, which has been the American policy since the Bush administration, and which Obama agrees with and is pushing it, even though Bibi Netanyahu came into the Congress on the previous occasion said, "I'm in favor of a two-state solution," he comes in now and says, "I'm not. There is no way that there's going to be a Palestinian state during my administration."
But you know
that is provocative. That is antagonistic, and you can expect an unhappy and a hostile relation.
Okay,
reaction
I
to that.
agree that it's provocative and antagonistic, and even maybe coming from an ego. But we are seeing that also the president of the United States is driven by his ego.
He
Just
is
today,
consistent. He hasn't changed his position. It is Mr. Netanyahu who's changed his position.
What I'm saying is that, be the bigger man. Just today we heard Benjamin Netanyahu apologize for his comments against the Israeli Arabs going in those to vote and going on buses to vote. And we heard a comment from the White House coming in saying, okay, we don't know what to believe from Benjamin Netanyahu. Is he saying
he said very clearly, we take him at his word. He says there won't be.
Well,
that means he's against a two-state solution.
Listen, I've got to interject here.
Why would you say otherwise?
Sheldon, as he typically does, forgets history. Okay, and this president, Obama, when he came into office, the first foreign trip he made was to Cairo, in which he made statements that not only were offensive to Israel, but also ended up causing
Why not
undermining
deal with what's going on today?
Deal
with what's going on today.
You made a claim, Sheldon, that it's the Prime Minister of Israel that's been provoking the relationship with the United States. That is simply not in accordance with the facts.
Exactly
this is the Prime Minister who sat by and was consistently offended by the President of the United States when he came to Washington, told to sit in the scullery while the president had dinner with his family, no photographic opportunities. The Prime Minister of Israel took a calculated decision to institute a 10-month moratorium on building in Judea and Samaria, which the president had demanded. Completely disregarded.
And Benjamin Netanyahu supported Romney, and Benjamin Netanyahu went to the Congress and picked him in his
That's
eye.
also a little bit of history that you should perhaps keep in mind.
I'm not suggesting that there hasn't been a little bit of shtuching from the other side.
More than a little bit.
Okay, but it's not one way. But you are correct about one thing, and that is Obama has not changed his policy.
Just can you tell me just what is shtuchim? Because
I'm sorry. That means it's an Arabic Yiddish word for giving somebody a pin in the
yes.
the whatever. Okay.
Fraud.
Fraud.
Yes.
But really, I'm trying to see. I'm seeing right now what is happening in the United States, and with the last letter from the House of Representatives, 367 Democrats and Republicans sending a letter to Barack Obama, telling him, "Listen, this is a bad deal," and maybe it was rude, it was even patronizing. It was wrong to go behind his back and go to the Senate and give a speech there. But maybe he was right. Maybe he put there a picture that right now even Barack Obama doesn't want to admit that he was right, that he is starting to pull back from this bad deal with
I
Iran.
did not criticize Benjamin Netanyahu for going to the Congress if he felt that this is what is necessary to protect the security of the state of
Exactly
Israel,
what I'm saying.
it's
Maybe
appropriate
it's
for the prime minister to do
necessary
this.
to have a Jewish chutzpah, to say,
that wasn't
okay,
his-
I'm going.
That wasn't the problem. The
What does
problem was
chutzpah mean, Lucy?
I think that everyone knows what is chutzpah.
the problem was not so much going to the Congress and speaking. The problem was taking a direct action in supporting Congress against the president and supporting the Republican Party against the Democratic Party by intervening in domestic, internal American politics. I think there he went wrong.
Lucy, I'm going to tell you something. I came back from Washington just the other day, in fact, the day of the elections, and I spent a week in Washington, and particularly on Capitol Hill. And I talked to not only Republicans, but Democrats and pundits alike. One thing that the Prime Minister of Israel succeeded in doing, I'll say it without any qualification, he changed the tone of the debate. He changed it. He raised the level of consciousness in the United States about the propriety of this agreement with Iran. When the Washington Post, the day after he spoke in Congress, itself a very liberal paper and an Obama supporting paper, turned to the White House and said, you've got to give answers to what the Prime Minister, the issues the Prime Minister has so clearly and succinctly raised before the Congress. That showed you what was happening. In the United States, Netanyahu made big points. By the way, he lost points electorally when he went to Washington. In terms of his own campaign here, it didn't help him or actually hurt him. And I said on this program and other programs that that's exactly what was going to happen. Showed courage on his part to go to Washington, and you, Sheldon, agreed. And he went to Washington. He raised the issues. He made the debate explicit. And now the people, the Congress and the White House and the public United States are talking seriously about this
And he
Iranian.
made an Israeli campaign, but the relationship, like you said, are in a really, really bad situation. Why to just push it down the hill even more?
How can Obama rely on Bibi Netanyahu to be a reliable partner for peace when Netanyahu gets up and says, during my administration, there will not be a Palestinian state. Now, if he doesn't want a Palestinian state because it's a security threat to Israel, because joining with Hamas makes it incompatible to do so, because Hamas and the PLO are perhaps two different entities and may lead to a three-state solution. There are lots of problems on this. To focus on that. But to come up and say, I'm against the two-state solution when the president is clearly in favor and where he himself is committed, that raises questions about his reliability. And it is perfectly appropriate for Obama to have some doubts about it, because this is what
Charles Krauthammer, in his
said.
Friday editorial syndicated column throughout the United States, made it very clear that this statement about Netanyahu made is true. What he said was it's not going to happen on his watch. And it's not going to happen on his watch for two reasons. One, the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mohammed Abbas, is in his 11th year of a 4-year term and has absolutely no legitimacy. Two, you've said it, he has no connection and no coordination at all with Hamas. And there's a third reason, and that is the whole Middle East is a boil. It's falling apart. We're seeing what's going on in Yemen just in the last few days. It's a tragedy. In Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, for God's sakes. Okay, the whole, and now Tunisia.
But how can you trust, and I'm asking you, how can you trust a leader when he's jumping from right to righter? It's like, he's always saying, yes, I said this, but I said that.
Well,
yes, I said this, but I meant that. Yes, I meant this, but
I think John McCain put it best. Look, there are things that are said in the course, in the course of a political.
Say that. Let him say.
Look,
I was only lying to my people in order to get elected.
No, it wasn't a lie.
Oh,
it wasn't.
Then it is his position that he's against the two-state solution.
Excuse me.
Which is it? Who's he lying to, the president or his people?
You just gave a whole laundry list of reasons why he might say it. That's the subtext for his comment. It's an election campaign. Things are said telegraphically. Things are said emotionally.
And in the phone call with him and Obama, he did not clarify. You've got a president of the United
States that's taking the Prime Minister of Israel to task for his remarks about the Arab voters of this country. Okay, when this president, including people of his own party, are saying he is the most divisive president on racial grounds in the United States in recent history. and that is an undeniable fact. This is what Ferguson's about the United States. This is what Port Hood is about the United States.
You want to blame
I'm blaming him for failing to be a
being
healer.
unclear from the part also of Barack Obama on a lot of issues, being unclear in your foreign policy. This is also contributing to this.
Yeah, but why isn't he and Obama on the same page? It's either one of two things. Either Mr. Netanyahu actually believes he's against a two-state solution. I don't know what the one-state solution would be, unless he's in favor of a 3 or 8 state solution. I don't know. He certainly hasn't clarified it. But if he's against the two-state solution, and this is what he said, then this is clearly against American policy. So it's very understandable why Mr. Obama would not be
Obama has
happy with that.
acted petulantly and almost like a child about this.
Yeah,
It's not the way a president should
continue.
act.
Mark will continue. They will continue fighting. We're going out.
Lucy,
for a
before
break.
you leave, I just want to say, you and what you represent are our hope. And I want to tell you something. I mean,
Thank you.
each of us, Sheldon and I, want to.